Slocomb's gonna break down his GP journey.
Because my road to GP was house hack.
Going from full-time youth minister to now full-time syndicator.
2 years later, my next deal was a BRRR.
To owning rooms with Joe Fairless and other commercial real estate legends. Then co-hosting the best ever real estate podcast.
The last vanity metric I got was a couple of years ago, they had 40 million downloads.
Wow.
Over 2,500 episodes.
And now obviously co-GPing and GPing on his own syndication. What's the big lesson learned for you?
If you don't have a local partner to where you want to invest, get you.
By the way, we're gonna film this podcast prior to our meetup, so if there's music, it's loud, we're in a casual venue. It's because this is actually the venue that Ash and I met, and a lot of people have done deals and just things like this, so it's not always a perfect room, it's not always quiet. Thanks for jumping on the show.
Absolutely, good to be here.
On the road to becoming a GP is all these check boxes though.
We should talk about the road to becoming a GP, because mine was very different. And that's one of the reasons I think it makes sense to find partners like Ian and me, because my road to GP was house hack, figure out how to have a few tenants in my own house, and then what's my next deal going to be? Become a real estate agent, learn the industry through transacting as an agent on behalf of other investors, start doing more of my own deals, dealing with contractors that way. And a lot of people are going to scale up and do the like single family duplex, fourplex, 16 unit. I dove in first full-time immediately.
Okay.
A youth minister's salary is not that hard to replace,
Yeah.
right? I kept a quarter-time youth ministry gig on the side for too long, but I was all in immediately.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons that BRRRR deals made sense for me off the jump. My first deal was a house hack, and 2 years later, my next deal was a BRRRR, because I lived around the corner. I was already a full-time agent, and so I could be there to micromanage everything while I needed to.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the intro then right there.
Sure.
Well, cheers.
I'm going to see how many sound bites I can give you in the next 45 minutes.
Jumping on the podcast with me. So you gave me a tad bit of the intro. Let's shape it out just a little bit more. This is going to be the how to become a GP and a little bit of your story. And now give me the highlights, like the reasons to click, the reasons to stay to the end. You are the host of the best ever commercial real estate podcast.
One of the hosts, yeah.
What's like the highlight view metrics of that too? Because that's not often do I get someone who's hosted more podcasts than I've hosted.
So the best ever CRE show and the best ever brand in general with the conference every March, April in Salt Lake City right now. Fantastic organization for thought leadership and education and commercial real estate in general. The last vanity metric I got was a couple of years ago, they had 40 million downloads.
Wow.
Daily show with over 2,500 episodes. I don't remember what the count is now. I stopped hosting for them a few months ago. Mutually, I was ready to move on. They were moving in a different direction. But yeah, 350 interviews later, there were a lot of conversations. It led to a much better understanding of what's happening around the country in real estate investing, because all of my activity is in my MSA. It's all Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I know Cincinnati better than I know the back of my hand. I still have veins show up. I was like, oh, damn, I'm old. This is what my dad looked like when I was my kid's age, right?
Yeah.
Hosting a podcast like that means interviewing 2 to 4 people a week and getting 2 to 4 perspectives on what's happening in the East Coast, what's happening in Texas, where is the cash flow in California, because it does exist. There are people buying cash flowing deals in Los Angeles County right now. What is it that you have to know? What is it you have to do to be able to get Los Angeles County cash flow? So it was interesting to see how different regions of the country were reacting differently as markets shifted through COVID. I started interviewing on the podcast in December of 2020, December of 21. So coming out of COVID, we were in a very different place. Before the Fed started raising the federal funds rate and interest rates started climbing along with it, watching that entire shift, but not only seeing it happen in Cincinnati, seeing it happen everywhere through these 2 to 4 interviews a week was a really interesting experience. And understanding I had no syndication experience until recently. I ended up coming into syndication with a very well-rounded understanding of what all is out there, how to structure deals. I didn't understand what LPs are looking for as well as my partner Ian did, because he's been living it for the last 3 years. He's full-time now. It was really interesting to have that many conversations, and a lot of them are surface level. It's a short form podcast. I want to get a couple of really good questions in there and get a couple of really good answers. But it was a really good broad understanding of what's going on in commercial real estate from having all of those conversations, and now listening to those episodes that come out daily is doing the same thing for listeners.
You built your own course for commercial real estate
Yeah.
with 300 something different modules or lectures, and then now you got to apply it right away.
Yeah, and I can't say that I'm maintaining 300 relationships coming out of it, but there are definitely people every once in a while who are like, hey, I want to bring you back on, I want to follow up with you. It wasn't my podcast, I didn't book them, but let me make sure I get your number and your email. I'll text you now, bring you back on later, see how things are going, deep dive into what the thing that I didn't have time for the first time. Yeah, so there's a lot of learning.
So, got to host a pretty big podcast.
Yes.
The best, well, it's the best ever, but it's the biggest commercial real estate podcast.
Yes.
Right, it has the most downloads. And then just for the vanity metric, for the click, what's the unit count out now that you've done a few different partnerships?
So my company, when it comes to property management, construction management, the investing services that we're providing to active investors, myself included, we manage just over 450 units. AUM is tricky because I'm not responsible for that for 2/3 of the portfolio, but it's around 45 million. And about 1/3 of that is mine on unit count and AUM. Some of that just me and my wife, of course, and a lot of it with partners. Started buying stuff myself. And then started JVing, one-off, hey, let's go 50-50, you bring the capital, I'll bring the deal and execute on it. And that grew into syndication, into my most recent acquisition, which, depending on how you count, we purchased it end of March, but we didn't lock in our long-term financing until end of June. It was this year, either way. That was a 73 unit, just over $5 million acquisition. That's a good chunk is in my personal portfolio and about 20% of the management portfolio.
And then the last piece of the puzzle is timeline. So going from full-time youth minister to now full-time syndicator, and obviously with the property management, yada, 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 GC company it sounds like too. How long did that span take? My
wife and I started a Red Rich Port ad in 2013, and that lit my hair on fire. And we closed on our first house hack in February of 2014. I was licensed as a sales agent in Ohio by the end of the year. I went full-time August of 2015. And from there, I did the full-time agent thing for about 6 years into 2021 when I shifted into focusing on my own investing and my own portfolio. That fall, I had a few house flips going on. I was doing a little bit of wholesaling with a partner, and my unit count was in the 60s, and that was requiring a lot of my time because a lot of it was a reposition play, plus the house flips, plus contractors quitting on me. So then you were flipping, property managing, buying BRRRR deals, all in 2021, and you had like 60 active projects altogether. Yes, all in Cincinnati, and that was my full-time thing. And that's part of the reason why I stepped away from sales. And I realized quickly that even by early 2022, when my unit count was more like 90, I didn't have enough of a portfolio to justify the staff that I wanted operationally. It was too much of the day-to-day was relying on me, which was taking me away from acquisitions opportunities to represent clients as an agent and get those commissions, which were a much better dollars per hour at the time. So it was 2022 when we started opening up the company I was building for myself, Three Little Pigs, to taking on third-party clients for property management, construction management, stuff like that. That was, bought our first house hack early 2014, full-time in real estate via sales agent, summer of 2015. By 2021, I had to leave some of the sales behind to focus on my own investments. And then 2022 opened up the services my company was doing for me to other investors. To now 2025, 450 units under management, around 45 million AUM. When did you also join as the co-host for Best Ever? That was December of 21. So about that same investment time, you're like, I'm gonna go into investing full time. Yes. Now give me some of the different catalysts that went through along the way. And maybe we'll skip from like 2021 on, why you invested in the market that you lived in. And obviously people are looking now in what markets are good. Cincinnati is one of the best markets to invest in. And why did you feel like you had to take on other clients and start to have a more services part of your business? So any of your listeners who have had to stay up calling contractors and figuring out why they didn't show up, why they didn't do what it is that they were asked to do, why they only did part of it but still want to get paid. When I was dealing with those kinds of things. And very acutely in the fall of 2020, in November of 2021, mid-November, we acquired a 26 unit with 16 delinquent rents. Wow. We had to turn 16 units in the first year out of the 26. And I had 2 house flips going, one just getting started and one that should have been done but wasn't done yet. And all of the contractors, all of the technicians, a couple of them full-time W-2 and a couple of GCs, all quit on me within a month of each other. So that was a catalyst, right?
Yeah.
And so part of it was, by the time I got into the spring and summer of 2022, and I had replaced those people, I had made the decision that I wanted everyone I was going to rely on to work for me full-time. Whether they were 1099 or W-2, the commitment I was making to them was, you'll get enough work from me that you don't need any other clients.
Yeah.
You don't need to go anywhere else to know that you're going to make as much money as you want to make.
Yeah.
In exchange, again, if you're a W-2, you know, that's what an employee expects, but even if they're 1099s, if you come work for me, I'm expecting to be able to tell you where to go and what to do every day. Yeah. I'm going to tell you which projects to prioritize. We will come to an agreement on how much you're being paid, whether it needs to be hourly or if it needs to be by the project based on the contractor and their style, and whether or not they can actually get work done productively getting paid hourly, because that's a huge thing. I wanted everyone I needed to rely on to be full-time in-house, doing what I told them to do, going where I told them to go, when I told them to go there. And it was, you can't do that at 90 units.
Yeah.
I thought at the time I could do it around 225, 250. And when I got to that point, I wasn't finding the deals to acquire in 2022. This is the start of sellers having unrealistic expectations because they've seen the valuations leading into the Fed, hiking the Fed funds rate. And so sellers are still unrealistic. Buyers are seeing new interest rates. Cap rates and cash flows are just not making sense. So I wasn't finding the things to buy. So I switched to third-party services because when I tripled the size of the portfolio by adding third-party, that meant I could have a full-time leasing person. I work with a lot of virtual assistants. I could add a few VAs and know that I had people full-time committed to sitting in front of a screen, answering the phone, making the calls that I needed to make sure every prospect is being followed up with, every tenant concern, maintenance request is being handled in a timely manner. But also, I wasn't relying on third party and other contractors to go fix the toilet anymore because I had a guy full-time and I was telling him, okay, these are the most important things today. It was really about operational efficiency, taking on third-party clients at first. The other thing is that my personal ambitions and my personal mission here is much less, at this point especially, about my family's finances than it is about helping people gain financial independence through real estate.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the focus now has shifted from what is my net worth, my cash flow, my AUM, to how many people am I helping gain their own independence? And we look at that in a couple of ways. Well, the company is called Three Little Pigs, or TLP. We take our relationship to the fairy tale very seriously. It comes from a business leadership lecture from the 80s, actually, from a speaker named Dave Severin. And his lecture was titled, The Three Little Pigs is Not a Fairy Tale. And what he was trying to explain was that we are all going through life living out one of those pigs. Building a house of straw, doing things as quickly as possible so we can just go back to playing. But no matter how sturdy the thing is, we have a house, we'll be fine. He says that the pig who's building the house of six is just following the crowd, whatever everyone else is doing is what I'm gonna do. And then it's the pig who decides to take more time, thought, concerted effort, and think, what is gonna keep me and my loved ones safe no matter what? And then he just does the work required to make that happen. And so we talk in terms of helping people build their house of bricks and thinking about the socio-political, economic, big bad wolves that are out there and how we can make sure that the people we're working with have the financial independence that can protect them from those kinds of shifts. I mean, the biggest shift we're talking about right now, we're not talking about COVID anymore, and we're not talking about inflation or tariffs as much as we're talking about how AI is going to disrupt the white-collar employment across the board, right? Well, helping people have other options for building equity, having cash flow, is a big part of the reaction, the response to people, especially who find themselves in fields where entry-level jobs are just flat out being eliminated by LLMs.
Yeah.
Remind me what you had actually asked me, because we're totally off topic now.
I was asking you for different catalysts for different times.
So the big one at that point was that going into 22, it was about having a team operationally that could make everything run more smoothly. We're looking for operational efficiencies. We're changing a couple of the softwares that we're using. I hired an actual EOS Worldwide coach. You know the books by Gino Wickman, Traction and Rocket Fuel. I hired an actual EOS Worldwide coach, which is not cheap, but has been really helpful, especially in actually getting us to implement all the business systems in EOS.
Yeah.
But also, like a good therapist, holding up a mirror to me and my company and saying, do you see this about yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
Do you see this about the way that your company works?
That from an operation side, and of course you're always going to improve that. And you want the system better for yourself as well as now for other people that you're representing and have as your clients. At that same time, it seems like you also started to co-host a podcast. If you're trying to figure out all that and get more time, get you out of the system, why did you also add in, sure, we'll host this? Because that seems like another thing that'll shiny object syndrome.
So I still ask myself that. And I think I'll say at the time, first of all, Joe Fairless is a friend of mine. We've been poker buddies for a while. Okay. And I've been hosting his local meetup in Cincinnati since 2020. The Cincinnati's best ever real estate investor mastermind. I looked at it as an opportunity to add value to Joe, the best ever, and just kind of see what came of it and not be focused on what is Slocomb getting out of this, but focus more so on the people I can connect with, what can I learn from them, and in so doing, what is the value I can add to the listeners? What is my educational journey that I can take them along with me?
This is gonna be hard. 300 plus episodes, I mean hundreds of syndicators and operators. Now you say, okay, what can I learn from it? What are the top 3 learnings from that entire process over the years that you've hosted?
The biggest one is that it really opened my eyes to the scale of commercial real estate investing. Coming from where I came from within real estate, syndication sounded like the niche thing a few people are doing and not the norm. I bought my fourplex, I'm doing a few BRRRR deals. Syndication is this ownership structure where I can raise capital, but you know what I'm doing is working. I didn't come from the private equity perspective, where what we call real estate syndication is how venture capital and a lot of private equity firms have been operating for decades at the least, just in other industries, in other spaces. So the biggest thing was having a better understanding of private equity works and understanding that, especially for people who want to be invested passively, this isn't something that a few people created in 2012 and all of a sudden we have real estate syndication. It's just the acquisition of private equity investment principles to commercial real estate.
Gotcha.
So that was the biggest thing for me. A couple others were, I had a lot of good high-level conversations about how to structure partnerships between operators and capital providers. Even within syndication, with equity splits, prefs, waterfalls, there's so many different things that you can do. At the end of the day, you're really just trying to figure out how to make sure that everyone who wants something and is contributing, whether it's capital, time, expertise, is getting what it is that they want to contribute, and making sure the deal is good enough to do that. But having a better understanding of all the ways that that can be applied, all of the different ways that ownership can be structured to get people what they want. Whether it is control, lack of liability, consistent cash flow like returns, big long-term returns without needing as much cash flow in the meantime. That would be the other one, is just all the different ways that people are doing this successfully.
Yeah, that's one. I go to your first learning of, I go back to this quote of, where in some different rooms you just can't talk about rental properties and acquisitions and raising money because it sounds somewhat pretentious to some, could sound like bragging, and then your goal is to try to get into rooms to where it's normalized, and that's just the thing to do.
Yeah.
Which is then what doing the podcast does, is because you're just like, oh, I raised this much, but now there's someone else where the bar seems untouchable again, but now it's becoming this normalized thing where you see it done hundreds and thousands of times.
Yeah, you were asking about catalysts earlier. One of them is happening currently. And that's my partnership with Ian and really properly getting to syndication level investments for the first time.
Yeah.
I still do onesie-twosie investing. I'm flipping a house right now. I have a unique single family BRRRR deal going on right now as well. It doesn't actually require any rehab. So you can take that R out. It's actually just buy, refinance, repeat. But that's why a $116,000 single family made sense for me at this point. But the catalyst is partnering with someone who has my weaknesses as his strengths, especially when it comes to doing larger deals. You know, Ian has spent the last 3 years really sinking his teeth into commercial real estate investing, doing some of his own deals, smaller deals. His GP partnership with Venture, which is one of the largest commercial multifamily teams in the Cincinnati area, and the exposure that he's gaining from that. His capital raising and investor relations experience paired with my experience leading a horse to water and getting it to drink, you know, actually executing on the business plans on multifamily has been huge. So a third of my personal portfolio came in one acquisition with Ian. And so it feels like if you were asking me in 2026, 27, what were the catalysts, that I'd be telling you right now, really properly getting into syndication sized deals.
Yeah.
Where the acquisition is 5 million and not 500,000. That's another one that's happening right here, because you can create solid returns for a lot more investors at once in a deal that size. You can also create a lot more wealth for yourself, taking a smaller piece of a much larger pie than duplexes and 4 families can afford you.
So now that you've done a few of these deals, and obviously you've done dozens of smaller deals, the time and effort versus the return, you're definitely preferring obviously the syndication side. So even though you're still doing some onesie-twosies, but that's where the eventual lean will be.
That's a good question. I am much more people-oriented, and when I think about what trajectory my company, my operating business, and I are going in, it has a lot to do with who I can partner with, who I can bring onto the team, who is going to add fuel to the fire, and which direction are we going to head in. We're at an interesting time in value-add multifamily, where, especially in Cincinnati, even though brokers don't have as many deals, and the deals aren't as good as you would say that they were in several years ago, lower interest rates, fewer players, fewer buyers in the market, there's a lot more appreciation to force in smaller deals.
Okay.
I also have the experience of transacting 2 and 4 families hundreds of times. So the direction we may be headed in is more direct to seller lead gen and direct to seller acquisitions of smaller deals and bundling them into like a BRRRR fund where Ian and I have the capacity to return all capital to our investors in year 2 and focus on deals that make sense for the long-term hold. Sell the ones we ought to sell when it's time, of course, but if we're able to return all of our investors' capital in year 2 and have something closer to like a 50-50 equity split with them. You were asking about the podcast. Nick and Elaine Stoggerberg in Minnesota have done this really well. Their ownership structure through syndication is a 50-50 GP-LP split, no pref or anything, but GPs don't take a single dollar off the table until the LPs have been made whole. So LPs have literally all of their capital returned to them, retain 50% equity in the deal, and the GPs also start participating in things like cash flow and gains from the sale afterwards. Yeah, it sounds novel in this context. I've had that partnership 4 times as a JV with one person. I'll go find the deal, I'll execute on it, you bring the capital. I've had a couple of house flipping partnerships that way. I've had a couple of BRRRR partnerships that way, where, I mean, my best performing property is still the one that I bought from Brandon Turner. And that's a 50-50 partnership where I brought the deal and he brought all of the capital to make it happen. And it was a 24-unit BRRRR.
You've had some unique strengths. You're in the market, property management, construction, podcast host, meetup. Obviously, not everyone has a property management company. Not everyone is an agent. Not everyone has a construction company. But I think the next checkbox is everyone wants to start a podcast. Everyone says influence and audience and yada, yada, yada with the start a meetup. What are your thoughts on all that? Starting a meetup, starting a podcast? overplayed? Or how can you actually play that card still?
I don't have my own podcast yet, but I would say that my accountability partner, Joe Cornwell, he has a very similar business to mine.
Okay.
In Cincinnati, and he just stepped away from the Best Ever CRE show as well as a host. And one of the things that we've realized is that what works right now is not for long-form content's sake, but taking intentional times like this, 45 minutes an hour to have a conversation, to get the things that work well on social media where everyone's already spending their time, where it's just a hell of a lot harder to saturate TikTok than it is Apple Podcasts. And there's a lot more scrolling, a lot more time being spent. And so I think the strategy that makes the most sense right now is to gain viewership, get eyeballs, and mind share through the short form social media content that people are gonna scroll regardless, and then use that to lead towards things like meetups, podcasts, all stuff that you're really good at already.
Thank you. But it's true, right? Like if you're gonna start a podcast, gonna start a meetup, each of those requires significant commitment for someone. Have someone listen to you for an hour who may not know you is a huge deal. Someone to then drive out somewhere to a group of people they've never met before, and then also try and sit there for a couple hours is even a bigger commitment.
To a place called Milpitas.
Yeah, it's a Big Al's, right?
It's a Big Al's.
This is exactly where I'm in right now. But if you can do something along the way in 30 seconds, 40 seconds, get them intrigued, and then maybe have them click on your profile, hit 5 videos and be like, all right, well, actually Slocomb knows some people and has done some things that I want to do, let's dig now. And now you get them into the funnel.
And it really feels like what's working right now is what is the smallest full engagement that's going to lead someone to want to follow up, want to learn more. One thing with my property management company that we take very seriously, I spend a lot of time feeling like I'm the defensive coordinator for a lot of real estate investors. Are you a football guy at all?
Yeah.
What are your sports? What do you play? What do you follow?
I follow the Niners, Warriors,
earlier.
CrossFit.
Okay.
Currently, I do coach my kids' flag football team.
Yeah.
And then jiu-jitsu. So.
Jiu-jitsu, nice.
I feel like a lot of guys in real estate do jiu-jitsu too, though.
I have a lot of real estate buddies who do jiu-jitsu. The reason why I feel like a defensive coordinator thinking American football and real estate is that my job is really to limit the amount of bad news I have to give to investors about things that have gone wrong. When I've done my job well, it's because we've given up the fewest points possible. I'm not the offensive coordinator, I'm not the acquisitions guy, I'm not putting up big numbers. And so our working relationship with our clients is based on a lot of trust, and it's based on a lot of needing to communicate when tenants leave, when tenants trash the place, haven't paid rent, keeping things going as smoothly as possible. So we don't sell. I have no interest in convincing anyone that they should work with us, because if I had to convince you to work with us, and then your property is going through a rough patch, maybe it's a 3-family, and 2 of the units are vacant, and we're dealing with fleas from the 1 unit who remains, which is part of the reason why the other 2 left. If you didn't trust me in the first place to have your back and be doing things as efficiently as possible, not only meaning as fast as possible, but also treating it like a financial investment and not just blowing all of your reserves to get this taken care of, I need to know that these are people who trusted me in the first place to handle situations like that. For the record, I didn't place the tenant with the fleas. That's an actual property. Okay. And that guy's gonna be here later. He texted me to tell me, We don't sell. I have no interest in convincing people to be my client. We're much more interested in putting into the marketplace, putting on social media, hosting meetups, demonstrating that we know what we're doing, so that people figure out how good we are at it, and they come to us asking us for permission to be our clients.
100%.
Yeah, because the work is hard. We're signing long-term agreements. It takes me a long time to fire a client, just like it takes a client a long time to fire me. And so we want to make sure that we're only working for and going into business with the right people, which starts with that funnel of them finding us through social media, or they were looking for a meetup and found ours and came around. Word of mouth referrals are obviously the best. And so we focus on things like that because what we do is difficult, you know?
Yeah. And it's also really hard to scale those very personal things. You've been hosting the meetup in Cincinnati for how long now?
I've been hosting since the beginning of 2020. It just had its 10-year anniversary, actually, yeah.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking about, obviously we were hosting this at a venue right before we we're gonna host the meetup, But if someone wants to take full advantage of a meetup, what are the right things to do and the wrong things to do? And how do you think we'll win at some of these meetups, these conferences? Like what's maybe the one thing they should focus on?
For the best ever meetup in Cincinnati, we always have a topic of discussion, a poll in the Facebook group, get some engagement. We often have a guest speaker who has a lot of really solid investing experience, a lot of wins and sometimes a lot of losses that they're willing to share. That's just to get people in the room. That's just to get people in the door, to be frank. The most valuable thing that anyone attending a meetup like this can do is identify the people they need to shake hands with before they leave, shake hands with those people before they leave, and set up the opportunity to build a relationship with them and identify some of those people who can help them advance in their real estate investing where they need to go. Let me tell another story here. It was 2016 when I found the Best Ever Meetup, met Joe. We also ended up creating a real estate investor poker game that played very consistently at least once a month until COVID. And now it's just a few times a year. In fact, while I'm here in town, Joe Fairless is hosting our game at his lake house outside of Cincinnati. And I have to miss it for the first time ever, the lake house poker. But I decided in 2016 that out of all the meetups I'd been to, there were more intentional people, more people who were going to invest or already investing, and more high-level players in that room than any other one. And I decided I was going to own the room. And I was going to get to the point where the people who came to, the regulars of the meetup, were going to point all the newbies to me as the guy they needed to talk to for whatever they needed. At the time, it was really just being their agent and helping them find good deals on market. But I did everything I could to be in the front of the room. Let me stay on this point for a minute because Joe Fairless was still interviewing guests at every single meetup. And I decided that when Joe asked if the audience had any questions, I was always going to have at least a couple. And I was going to have things I wanted to learn, but I was going to ask as good of a question, as revealing a question as possible. I really pissed off a couple of guests because I didn't let them dance around the non-answers that they had given. That specifically led to me getting some attention from the room even though I wasn't in front. And that's also the reason why Joe tapped me in 2021 as he was stepping back to be one of the hosts of the podcast, is because he realized this guy Slocomb has been asking great questions at my meetup for years. I also, whenever they needed a big voice to get everyone to shut up and sit down, I often joke about Ian inviting me to SARE and figuring out whether or not I'm Asian enough to be in SARE. And so my name is Slocomb. There's a B in it. It's hard to say sometimes, especially if you're hearing it for the first time in a crowd like this or in a noise. It's hard to spell. And so I often just go by Bill. It's just because, like, I say I look like a Bill, right? I don't look like a Slocomb. And everyone understands Bill when you say it over the phone. Or when you're ordering pizza or, hey, what name can I put on your coffee? Bill, everybody gets it, everybody knows how to spell it. I was thinking, I go by Slocomb, my family calls me Slocomb, my friends call me Slocomb, but these random people I'm meeting, it's just easier to go by Bill. I was like, that's one of the most Asian American experiences that there is, right?
So Ashley's not even a real name for me. So same thing. Nobody knows how to pronounce or spell my actual name.
If it makes sense, what does your family call you? It's like telling people to call me Bill because it's easier. That's about as Asian American, Asian immigrant as an experience as you can have.
You've been crowned honorary Asian.
Great. Last question before we get to the meetup in a couple of minutes. So you've been through the first GP system, raise, all of that. What's the big lesson learned for you?
I would say that it's interesting, and it's interesting to have Ash here for this answer, because I have to say that the biggest thing that we learned, a couple of things that we look back on, and Ian and I had our after action review, our debrief meeting this morning, because it's the first time we've met in person since it was finally fully funded end of June. We fully subscribed last year, but we actually locked in our long-term financing June 30th, and there are a couple of things that we reflected on, and one in particular I had to go back to a couple of times, was that I'm not new to real estate. A partner like me does help us secure long-term financing because of my operation experience, my portfolio, the fact that I'm local. We were new to this space, new to working with the big name brokers. This was going to be our first brokered deal with one of the big name brokerages. In order to get the deal for the price that we wanted, we had to structure seller favorable terms. We had to give ourselves a too short due diligence period. we had to make a lot more good faith deposit go hard quickly in order to win the deal. And so we did that. More of my money, more of our money was on the line. We had to rush through due diligence. We did miss a couple of things that would have been really hard to find had we found them during due diligence. However, we bought the deal for the right price. And so the things that we missed in due diligence, we've been able to affordably resolve. And getting the price that we needed, and also recognizing we were new and we needed to get an acquisition under our belt, it was a grind getting to the closing table, in large part because we were going with agency debt for the acquisition. And that's the other key takeaway here, is that because we're talking about 1960s brick bunker architecture, it's all over the Midwest, but especially in Cincinnati, we had a difficult PCA, property condition assessment, that was originally for Freddie Mac. And the assessor just threw the book at us. Everything a nearing retirement, doesn't give a shit engineer could throw into a report, he threw into a report. Feel free to bleep that if you need to, but I have very strong feelings about that guy. And going with agency debt on the acquisition threw a lot of curveballs. We dealt with a lot of seller fatigue because we needed so many extensions, it took us so long to get to the closing table. We actually ended up closing with a hard money loan at 16% interest, which was a great option for us because it came with no origination fees, no points.
Oh.
And since we only ended up needing the loan for 3 months, having no fees, no points up front, borrowing $2.25 million, the 16% interest was a better offer for us on hard money, very short-term bridge debt, than any of the other options available to be able to close within 5 days. But I would say that the biggest takeaway, honestly, is that we realize the next time we do this with this vintage of property, we need to be working through a local bank relationship or a regional bank relationship that we've been fostering for a while, or a bank where we already have loans and they know that we're going to execute on a business plan and we're going to close and we're going to make our payments to make that acquisition smoother, be able to close on time, and then transition, treat agency debt like the cash out refi option. When we already own the property, when the results of the assessment are that $100,000 needs to be put into exterior CapEx improvements, and they want to see it happen before they close the loan, that we already own the property, and it makes sense for us to spend that kind of money if we haven't already, because we've been executing on a business plan, because this is a refi now, not an acquisition. Treat agency debt like it's more of a refi option than an acquisition option, because of the number of curveballs that can be thrown that we had to swing at. And I will say, specific to Ash, who's here watching me say these things about how much trouble I had working with her company to get this loan closed, Ash specifically, you know that Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth?
Yeah.
Well, we definitely got punched in the mouth through the loan process. And of all of the people involved, the only person who made us feel like they were on the mat with us and helping us get up was Ash. And I know that Ash played a larger role than she got credit for, even within her own brokerage, for making that deal happen. So really, really grateful for Ash and her role in that. Not just saying that, by the way. I said this to Ian consistently throughout the deal, that it felt like the only person working with us to get this closed was Ash. Good to meet you in person, by the way.
At our venting sessions.
The two biggest takeaways were, in hindsight, we had some issues, but we needed to have those due diligence and earnest money going hard and threat of losing the deal and having to find hard money. We had to have those problems because we had to make ourselves a more compelling buyer than other buyers, being new to the space. Not new to real estate investing, but new to broker deals of that size. We had to put ourselves in a position to have that stress, to give the seller more favorable terms, to be able to buy the property at the price we needed to deliver the returns that we wanted to deliver. So that stress was partly self-created and necessary. But the other one was, don't even bother with agency debt on acquisition, especially for 1960s vintage. You just go with a local bank, build your relationships in advance, go to the bankers where you already have loans in the area. If you don't have a local partner to where you want to invest, get you a Slocomb who has experience in a portfolio, he's local. There are a lot of things that regional banks find sexy about someone like me. And so having someone like me on your team, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Atlanta, Tampa, Austin, wherever it is going to make it easier to get that loan especially early on.
If someone wants to find the Slocumb, where can they find the Slocumb?
Yeah, so back to the jokes we're making. If you can spell Slocomb Reed, you can find me pretty much anywhere. I'm currently most active social media-wise on Facebook.
Okay.
It is Slocomb, S-L-O-C-O, M as in Mike, B as in Bravo, Reed, R-E-E-D. You can find our property management company at tlp-management.com. Those would be the two best ways to connect with me. Find me on Google, find me on Facebook, or find our website.
And I'm gonna get it super easy. Slocumb, I appreciate you coming to the meetup.
Absolutely,
on the
glad to be here.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
And obviously, if you enjoyed that and you want to learn more about what Slocomb's doing, please make sure you follow on his channels, and then obviously follow on my channel,
Absolutely.
subscribe, all of that, and I appreciate it again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, quick intro, and then we'll get to the meetup.